My name is Danny Sheehan. I'm a constitutional litigator who's worked some of the most important cases in modern American history. From Pentagon Papers, the Watergate scandal, to Iran-Contra. My legal career has led me now to this pivotal moment. As our human family confronts the implications of the existence here on our planet of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional non-human species. I will be your guide as we dive into the profound philosophical, theological, and public policy questions pertaining to the UFO phenomenon, alien life, and the citizen movement for disclosure. This is the Full Disclosure Podcast, coming to you from the New Paradigm Institute on SpectraVision Radio.
This weekend, I interviewed former Air Force First Lieutenant Robert Salas, who was about 80 feet underground inside the capsule of a missile launch control center on March 16, 1967 at Malmstrom Air Force Base. It was early morning when a security guard above ground called to report a large unidentified light.
He was very frightened, very agitated. Said there was a UFO hovering right outside the front gate. It was silent. It was glowing red, and it appeared to be saucer-shaped.
2 o'clock in the morning, outside of the gate of the Malmstrom Minuteman missile silo site, this big, glowing orange, kind of shimmering craft appeared out in front of the gates, 100 feet off the ground. One of the sentries called down to Lieutenant Salas and said, Lieutenant Salas, we got a problem here. There's some kind of a strange vehicle of some sort. It's an aircraft. I've got injured personnel here. A couple of the guys had freaked out and gotten so frightened by this, they tried to climb out over the razor wire and had gotten hurt. And Salas was therefore deeply concerned about what was happening. All of a sudden, each of the 10 missiles, the Minuteman nuclear missiles that were there at the silos in Malmstrom, went offline. Bang, 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 one after another. Salas called up to the commander. Colonel Arnoldson is the one that called NORAD. NORAD were saying, "Are you trying to report a UFO sighting?" And he said, "Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm reporting a UFO incident." And Arnoldson reported to NORAD that he was insisting upon filing a UFO report. They required him to go get a psychiatric exam to talk to Dr. John Mack.
Harvard University psychiatrist Dr. John Mack is a researcher of a subject that many scientists avoid. He studies people who say they have been kidnapped by aliens from space.
Nothing in my 40 years of working with people prepared me for this phenomenon. These are people of sound mind, healthy people. By and large, they've been traumatized, many of them, by these experiences, but they're reporting in great detail narratives that are highly similar. They come forth reluctantly. They know who to talk to and who not to talk to, which is not true of people who have delusions, or have come up with something which is a reflection of a mental illness. And the only thing that I know that behaves like that is real experience, where something has actually happened to these people. Then the question is, what has happened?
John had a handful of the studies that he'd had to do over the years, reports from these high-level military officials who are trained observers, most of them. A lot of them are pilots. He had done the psychological workups on these people, and that they were within the normal parameters of being mentally healthy. He was puzzled by this phenomenon, and he decided that he was going to call his mother. He actually called his mother and started talking to her about this and saying what a peculiar thing this is. And she said, oh, you should talk to the Hopkins boy, Bud Hopkins. Even though he's an artist and a sculptor and stuff, he's down in New York City, and he's kind of gotten into finding people who have had these direct encounters with UFOs.
Bud Hopkins conducts support groups for people who believe they've been abducted. Here they come together to share their stories.
I was taken to some underwater facility. This thing is a huge dome, underwater dome. It's like a bubble. There's no girders, no beams, nothing holding this up. It's just this huge bubble. You could probably fit 10 football fields.
Hopkins has devoted much of the last 2 decades to finding and writing books about cases of alien kidnapping.
John gave him a call and ended up going to see him. And Hopkins started telling John in detail about people that had not only seen UFOs, but had actually encountered some of the beings that were the occupants and pilots of these craft. And so John was kind of taken aback by that because he hadn't gotten any information like that. And so he agreed to interview some of these people that Bud Hopkins introduced him to.
Something otherworldly had happened to me. I mean, I was 5 years old and I was lying in bed, and it was nice and quiet, and then all of a sudden what I remember is this incredible, I can't think of any of the words to describe it except to say it was a light show. It was more like a laser show. I mean, it's just the most incredible patterns and colors that, I mean, I see them in my mind, but I have no words for them.
They removed my eye completely. They allowed it to hang off on the right side of my face like this. And there's this probe that they had that came from the ceiling.
The people would come to him, and he would interview them regularly, and as they began to recount direct encounters that they had, they started taking on a certain pattern.
He's doing something in my nose. I can't move. He's doing something in my nose and I can't move.
What is it?
It's that recording thing, that tracking thing that they have to put in there.
Most of these people had these experiences at nighttime, that they were asleep in bed, and they awakened in the middle of the night, and they found that one or more, up to 3 at a time, of these beings in the room with them. And all of them at first thought that they were dreaming, that something was not right here, but that they'd all become convinced that these were real. 3.5 feet tall, large head, big almond-shaped black eyes with little nose holes. They would actually abduct the people. They would elevate them, kind of levitate them out of their bed, and then, bizarrely enough, take them right up through the ceiling. So John was kind of skeptical at the beginning, thinking that this had to be some sort of strange psychological aberration that these people were having. But he was struck by the fact that the facts were so similar. Even though these people had had no communication with each other, there was very little written about all this at this time. People were telling about being lifted up into the air and brought into some kind of an enclosure, which they thought was the craft that was hovering over their house. He would ask them, what do you see? You know, how many people are in the room? Are there any other human beings there? What do these people look like exactly? How many of them were there? They were more than kind of psychological questions. They were kind of investigatory. And they would begin to tell him about having been examined. were told to take off their clothes, and they were laid on this table, and they would describe the table, that it was this very extraordinarily interesting table that kind of molded to their body and was kind of body temperature so that it wasn't uncomfortable, and that they would be examined. So John finally decided that he was going to write an article for the New England Journal of Medicine, which is sort of the premier peer-reviewed medical journal in New England. And so he prepared a short piece for them and sent it in. It was sent back to him with a note saying that they weren't going to publish this. John was kind of taken aback by that. You know, he had written 100 articles, scientific articles that had been published, went through and re-edited the article and sent it back. The executive secretary for Arnold Relman, who was the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, his executive secretary had come back to John's office with the envelope unopened. And she said, look, Dr. Relman has ordered me to turn this back to you, to hand deliver it to you, and to note to you that it's not been opened. That not only are we not going to publish this article, we're not even going to open it or read it. And so what John did is contacted a publisher, you know, having been a Pulitzer Prize winner, and it got published. Right after it hit the stands, the dean of the medical school comes in to John's office and says, John, I understand that you've just published this book about abductions. Look, why don't you and I get together and talk about this? John said, oh, that'd be great. I'd be happy to do that. And the dean said, and as long as we're going to get together, why don't we get together, you know, some of the other members of the faculty, you can explain this stuff to them. And John said, that would be terrific. Goes to the time and place of the appointment, and here's the dean, you know, sitting up on this dais with the legal counsel for Harvard University and Dr. Relman chairing this tribunal with 3 other members of the faculty that are there. They immediately began excoriating him, you know, for embarrassing Harvard University, writing about such a stupid thing as this, that this was clearly untrue, that these people were crazy. So John called me and explained what was happening to him. And so I agreed to represent him. And I said, just, you know, give me a list of the people that you want me to put together for witnesses for us. He started giving me a list of all these different people to go see. So I started contacting them. Bud Hopkins, Stanton Friedman, Dr. Stephen Greer, Linda Moulton Howe, and I talked to Jesse Marcel, Jaime Maussan down in Mexico. So I was putting together the witnesses to present in a grand rounds. All the stuff was financed. We could fly all the people here. We got it all organized how we were going to be videotaping the whole thing so that we could have this for posterity. I contacted one professor at the University of Colorado, and the minute that he found out what was going on, he contacted the news media. When the media was contacted, it exploded.
He is an eminent psychiatrist, and he has been cited on numerous occasions for his scholarship.
He won a Pulitzer Prize.
Dr. Mack believes that his patients' experiences are real.
Dr. Mack has studied about 100 patients who claim they have been abducted by aliens.
And so he became kind of world famous. And in fact, during the process, this whole group of 60 kids at this private school in Zimbabwe, UFO had landed right at the edge of their playground. And these beings had gotten out and communicated with the kids. John jumped on an airplane, flew to Zimbabwe, and interviewed these kids.
You heard a noise in the air? What was it like?
It was like someone was blowing a flute. I saw something strange and something peculiar. And we quickly ran to the to the logs and we saw a silver thing, and we saw a man standing next to it.
And what did he look like?
Well, he had big eyes that like pointed.
The eyes were large, is that right?
Yes.
Did you look into the eyes? I mean, did you have a sense that you were...
No, all we saw was his eyes. They were black.
Black, but like, were they looking at you, or were you at him?
It seemed that he was looking at all of us.
The lights came on for him. The indigenous tribes in different areas of the world all have a common belief that they have encountered star people. In some kind of a sky-type chariot, or something that lands from the sky, and then talks with them and shares with them kind of spiritual insight. John was very, very much into this. He would go and interview indigenous people in Africa, down in South America. John and I had decided that what this was a major conflict of worldviews. There was a worldview that Harvard University was involved in espousing, which was the scientific, logical, positivist, kind of materialist worldview. And John and I decided that what we were going to do, we were going to try to establish a worldview institute at Harvard, recruit staff and build this thing out. So we were in the midst of doing all of that in 2004 when John got killed. He was over in England, in London, doing a presentation about T.E. Lawrence, and stepped off the curb and looked in the wrong direction, and got hit by a drunk taxi cab driver. And as soon as John got killed, it basically, everything started just dissolving. And the staff didn't have the kind of charismatic single leader that it needed to have to keep on going, and so that it kind of dissolved away. My career as legal counsel for John Mack really went from like June or May or June of 1994 up until I think it was around. It was shortly before the election in 2004 that I was his legal counsel and friend.
This has been Full Disclosure with Danny Sheehan. Produced by Daniel Noah for the New Paradigm Institute on Spectre Vision Radio. To join the citizen movement for disclosure, visit newparadigminstitute.org/take action.